Welcome to Trapping Inc.'s Scuttlebutt podcast. I'm Rich.
And I'm Sandy. And again, we were out on location, but this time it's raining outside, so we're in the cabin. And it's a Sunday morning. It's beautiful out here, really.
Yesterday morning was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was zero.
Yeah, 0 or 32 degrees Fahrenheit on the 25th of August.
Yeah. It's not a killing frost.
No.
And there was no actual frost on anything out there, but it was nip.
Well, we shouldn't act like it's any big surprise. I mean, I think one of the best snowstorms I've ever seen in August. Yeah, I said that right. In August. The best snowstorms I've ever seen in August was on August 4th.
Oh.
And the garden got flattened, remember?
Yes.
Absolute wet snow flattened it. It was done.
Yeah. So, we can get snow, bad weather, harsh conditions any time of the year, really. I think, have we seen snow in July? I know we've seen snow in June.
I have. And actually, I remember it being July 12th.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Anyway, nothing new for us northerners up here to have some cooler temperatures. But this morning, it rained, I guess, overnight. I wouldn't know. I think I was sound asleep.
You were doing a little flannel therapy, also known as snoring.
Oh, well, sorry. That just means I'm comfortable and content and safe. And it's all those things out here. So we don't have any issues with people or, for the most part, animals, although we have had a bear visit us occasionally.
Oh, a little bit. But that's all part of the fun and games of living out here. We are sitting in our kitchen, which is actually, as far as you're looking this way, there's about half that much that way in the cabin. This is it. But those are Sandy's dirty dishes. I know. She's going to get on them later.
I always do the dishes and sweep the floor before we leave.
Today's podcast, we want to talk about trapping a little bit and about planning a trapline, planning our season.
So on a trapping podcast, we're going to talk about trapping.
Yeah, I know. We rant,
awesome.
We rant and rave about everything, don't we?
We
do. Yeah, people love that.
But you're right. I mean, now's the time of year that we want to start thinking about planning. Now that we've got our winter's wood up and
that smell is in the air.
And in fact, as we were wandering around with the Argo yesterday, there are certainly some definite signs of fall. There are some leaves that are turning and...
Oh, the beaver are really active.
And the beaver are active.
Yeah.
So we know that, and I mean, just by the calendar, fall is just around the corner.
That's one of the things that you do this time of year, too, though, is as we're doing cleanup on our lines and that's the next trip out, is we'll make as much as we can. I mean, we have hundreds of kilometers, over 300 and some kilometers of trail that we got to open, and a lot of it we can't open. We'll never get all the way around it before the season starts.
No.
Some of it I don't target until later in the season, and when we got lots of snow, and then it's not so much. I don't have to remove so many logs now because you're driving over everything.
And I mean, we go out there and do something about, trees coming in, and inevitably we get an early snowfall where the leaves are still on a lot of the deciduous trees, and they just kind of cave in anyway. So it's kind of like you're darned if you do and darned if you don't. Right?
One of the first things, though, I want to talk about is about trapping. And why is trapping still relevant today? Well, it is extremely relevant because trappers, as you've heard us say, are the last buffer between the animals or the wild and civilization. We're also the first to notice diseases. We're the first to notice trends, that sort of thing. So we're extremely relevant. The other thing I want to point out is that trappers are not doing damage to populations. There's a lot of studies that show, as a matter of fact, that as a trapline is developed and trapped in that, the animals prosper because trappers keep it more in balance, right? You've got to understand that animals overpopulate huge. It's just like when I was a professional walleye fisherman. Mm-hmm. A very common thing is that a big female walleye, an 8-pound female, she might throw 100,000 eggs. Of that, less than 1% would make it to spawn themselves. So that was her way or nature's way of providing for the species, was to overproduce like that. And it's no different with our fur, our marten, our rats, any of the fur. The reason, they produce such big litters in that is that only 10% are going to make it through that first winter.
Yeah.
Okay. So trappers are just dealing in a surplus, nothing more. We are not damaging the core population. We're just handling the surplus, and that's why, especially with things like Martin, that we really look for to be targeting the juveniles as they disperse, the juvenile males, juvenile females, that sort of thing. And it's pretty easy to tell the difference about what you're getting, and we notice that really with our links on this line now. This will be our fifth or sixth winter on this
season
line.
out here.
And last winter was the first winter that we actually got a juvenile lynx.
Yeah.
Other than that, they've all been big, mature males and females, like big, mature males and females. And so now we've got it back in balance because we should be catching some immature. Because if you're not catching immature, it's no different than we go back to that lake. You know, when they do netting studies on a lake, and if they're not netting any little fish, then there's no future, right?
Right.
It's the same thing here. So.
Not that we want to target all the little ones, but you don't really. I mean, there really isn't any set that targets a juvenile over a over a mature adult.
There's more of them. It's the old pyramid again. There's more of the juveniles than the matures, and the fact is that they're the ones that aren't going to make that first winter.
Well, and you don't want that inverted triangle either, where all you've got is the older ones, because if they die off, then you've got nothing underneath, like you say. If you don't have those juveniles or young fingerlings in the fish population, then you don't have a future. So we're feeling pretty good about what our impact on this particular line has been.
Absolutely. Things like your muskrats, populations can get out of control so fast. In the 80s, we had a huge, because fur populations crashed, and we had a huge infestation, I guess, or a disease swept through. Tularemia swept through northern Alberta. And it hadn't been until since from the 80s till the year 2000 before we started seeing muskrats again. When I was a kid, there was muskrats everywhere. My brother and I used to trap the ponds within the city limits of Grand Prairie, as a matter of fact, and we'd put on our skates every night after school and go check all our muskrat push-ups and everything. But then that all disappeared when they got disease, and that's the way this goes. Is that these populations get these huge buildup of up to the top where it's unsustainable, then they starvation or disease, and they crash down to where they're barely survivable. We want to just clip off the tops there so that we keep the sine wave a little closer to the middle, and it's sustainable over a longer term. Muskrats, believe it or not, she can have 4 litters a summer, even here in the north, up to 14
per litter. Yeah.
Her first litter can have their first litter before the summer's out.
Yeah.
Not common, but it can happen.
Yeah.
So you can see how those populations just explode.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And they're hard on each other too. They don't like the competition in each other, and lots of times, they're pushing the young ones out and they've got nowhere to go.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later about the fighting and that kind of stuff that goes on with overpopulation, but people always are emailing and calling and everything else and want to know how to start trapping. And I guess the first thing we have to talk about is the legalities.
Yeah. And that's wherever you are, whether you're in the U.S. or whether you're in Canada. Here in Alberta, there's a number of places that you can get courses, but you must have a trapper's license of some sort. So if you have
in Alberta,
that's what I said.
They have to know their jurisdiction for sure.
Yeah. But the Alberta Trappers Association in Alberta is a great place to go for information if you are looking to become a trapper here, whether that be on a registered line or have a residential license, a residence license.
Residential, same thing. So you need, if it is a requirement of your jurisdiction, you need to get your license. And in Alberta, and a lot of the jurisdictions now are starting to go this way in Canada, especially, is that you have to have education. I know that a snaring course is now recommended.
Yeah.
Which is because we use killing snares in Alberta, and so we have an individual course that is just for snaring, and I think within a few years that's going to be mandatory that you have to have taken it, or maybe might even have to review it every 5 years or whatever.
Well, one of the great places to go for that sort of thing is find a local that's close to you, wherever it is that you are. And we know from traveling in the States that there's lots of locals around there in the individual states, and in Alberta as well. I don't know how many locals there are in Alberta, but we belong to one near Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of information from there. It's a great place to be face to face with other trappers and learn. And a lot of these locals put on courses or bring in qualified instructors to be able to teach some of these courses, like the snaring course. Like we took that course last fall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things too is when we're talking about locals, that might be your local club or whatever, but they will all be associated with your state or provincial association.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
so they'll be under that umbrella. And if there is any mandatory governance or whatever that they all have to follow, they will ensure that everybody is up to speed on it.
Yeah. So the next thing that you need to know, so I mean, licensing and proper education is one thing, but then you need to find access. And unless you have a registered line, which in Alberta is called a registered fur management area, which is what we have here, we also have a residence license each.
In Saskatchewan, it's an RTL, registered trapline.
Oh.
See, now, we couldn't have done that simple in Alberta.
No.
That would never work for the Alberta government.
Every government's a little
Saskatchewan's got it together.
Yeah.
RTL.
Yeah, they don't have as many people to employ, I guess.
I guess.
Anyway, so access is really important, but in Alberta, you need written permission to
On private land.
On private land.
Yeah. So we've mentioned this before, but there are registered traplines and there are residence traplines. Residential licenses are good on private land, okay? So that's land owned by somebody. Registered traplines are out on the public lands. Registered traplines have an owner. We're on our registered trapline here. I am the senior holder. Sandi is my junior. The senior is the owner of the line. We are the only people, the senior and whatever juniors the senior has signed on, are the only people who can trap on him on a registered trapline. Residential trapline is like our home quarter.
Yeah.
We can sign a resident on it. We can have our own resident license on it.
Right.
And but in Alberta and a lot of jurisdictions, those permissions have to be in written. They have to be signed and in writing. You also in Alberta they have to check off if they're going to allow to use killing snares.
Right.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. It's just like when we talked about just a minute ago about the education. These are all defenses against what's coming, the antis and everything else, guys. When we show that we are being proactive and that a lot of people hate, oh, God, I've been snaring for 30 years. What do I need a course for? Because until we get everybody on the same level playing field, we have good and bad actors, and we want to get at least everybody up to the point where we can say, hey, we're doing our due diligence, right?
Well, trapping is no different than any other member group in society. You've got good actors and bad actors, but hopefully by bringing you some of what we know and that we've learned from others, because as we've said many times, we are certainly not the experts, but we can deliver some of the information to help you find the experts or to go for more information.
Yeah, and then, when people have contacted us and I say, okay, you need your license, yeah, got that. You need the education, got that. Access, got that. They said, so what trap should I buy? And I say, well, what do you know about your land? What do you know about your line, your land, your line?
Where are you going to be trapping and what Furbearers are on that?
Now, we have 144 square miles out here, which is an unbelievable amount of land, and yet I've been going on this flat out for 6 years. I've probably got, between the various machines, I would say I have 15,000 miles on machines on this land out here, and I'm still learning stuff every time I'm out here. I learn.
Well,
something
you take
new.
a different. If you turn left instead of right at Albuquerque,
the old left at Albuquerque.
Yeah, the left at Albuquerque.
There's a lot of young people listening to this who are never going to get that joke.
No, I
but
know.
everybody else.
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny reference. That's where we also learned about classical music.
Yeah.
Our generation. Anyway, if we took a left or a right on any given path, you're going to find, in many cases, much different habitat than what's on the other side of the turn. So you have to know your line in order to be able to plan for it. And hopefully you can loop, because the last thing you want to do is run back across your trail. It just takes more time. And time, I think we've talked about it before, you can't make any more of it. So it's really precious. And up here in the wintertime, it's dark a lot of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we only have right about
I
seven
don't even
hours of
I
daylight or
don't even
something.
think about it. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was puttering around out in the fur shed net, and I'm finding all of the different headlamps, and I'm changing batteries, and I have a collection. Like some people have a sock drawer, I have a drawer full of headlamps because at any one time half of them are dead or need a battery, and rechargeable ones just don't work because you never, you're going all night long. You get back here, I can't run the generator at night.
Well, sometimes we do. Sometimes we do run the generator at night, but it's not very often because we do heat with wood and keeps the cabin quite nice.
So when you spend that time out on your line, you're constantly learning more and more of the intricacies of it and what animals are there, what populations are,
Yeah.
and how they interact with those features of your land. Those are so valuable. I mean, I can tell you that I like to catch fisher on, the best fisher set for me is right between, that transition line between a muskeg, like a tamarack or spruce muskeg and the hardwood,
Yeah.
right on that edge. I can tell you that. But until you go out and actually look and see the differences in the different places, you're never going to hit the right one.
No.
I mean, the generalities are there, yes, but once you go out and actually learn your land, so before you ever worry about what lure or what trap or anything else that you're going to do, you need to learn that land. And
Yeah.
I know that I've done an immense amount of work, and it happens on every line I go to, but I do immense amount of work really that's non-productive. And, after 5, 6 years, now you're really starting to get productive.
Yeah.
And that's just because you know what's going on, right?
Yeah. Well, there's no substitute for getting out there and running the land, whether that's walking it, depending on the size of your line and the access that you have. That's a big thing for us because even some areas now, even though the water levels are a bit lower now this time of year, there are areas that we don't go even with the Argo because
Oh,
there is some really
we have
bottomless places out there.
we have places where the muskeg is actually floating. So you have willow clumps and moss and all that, and you can actually fall down between it, and God knows how deep it might be 12 feet deep. So even with the Argo, if you take and fall down in between willow humps, somebody's got to
Somebody.
somebody has to get out and pull winch to try and get you out. And then
Oh yeah,
sometimes,
I love how you put your hand up and say that you're the somebody. That's not accurate.
what? What? Sometimes you might gather up half of a muskeg and pull it all towards you because everything's floating. So
Yeah.
those places are creepy. We've learned a bunch of those and we kind of stay away from them. I can remember one time this was when I was much younger and I was out hunting, walking across a muskeg and I literally went straight down and I don't know how deep it was and my brother was walking beside me and he looked over and he says there was just my hat sitting on top of the moss. I came back up out of there in a hurry. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
It was bad stuff. There are only two things. Here's the other thing. And when
Certainties.
two certainties, because when people want to talk about trapping, they just the way people are. We're so digital. We're on and off. We're on and off.
Yeah.
Did he bump your? He run his big nose into that?
He loves to love me.
Yeah, Eli here figures if you're talking, you should be petting him.
Yeah.
There are only really two of those on-off switches, two certainties when it comes to trapping, and they are the opening day of a season for a species and the closing day.
Yeah.
Everything else in between is up for interpretation.
Oh, good word. I was going to use the same one.
Were
yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting
It's like
smarter.
I can read. Now I can read your mind. That ought to scare you.
Oh, I gave up on that. I knew you could read my mind years ago. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things. We talked about damage to fur. Like in the springtime, our muskrat season runs to May 15th. It was not very often that we will trap that late because usually on an average spring by the middle of April, the males are fighting so bad, territorial and breeding and all that kind of stuff, that they have huge holes in one another and they're vicious little things.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, if you've ever seen the teeth on a muskrat and the claws on them, you can you get the idea pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll shut it down. There's no sense catching them if you're not going to get good money for them, right?
Well, and the other thing that we shut down early sometimes is our fisher and martin are caught in very similar traps. In fact, a big fisher,
Identical. Yeah.
a big fisher will stuff his head into a 120 body grip trap and with no trouble at all. And obviously, the fisher are a quota animal for us. I think we've mentioned that before.
Yeah.
And martin are not. But as we get closer to our
Quota.
limit, then we generally just yank everything because you can catch a fisher in a lynx pen, for goodness sake.
Fisher are very aggressive.
And we don't want to be over our quota. That just creates lots of questions and
Yeah, our quota is 18.
Yeah.
18 for the season.
Yep.
And quotas are set based on mostly voodoo, I think, but but supposedly on where you're located and the size of your line. And so, some places are better for fisher than others, and so that you get a bigger quota. But yeah, when that comes up, well, then we got to shut that stuff down. The other things that control is, once again in early spring, your wolves might go springy, like where they lose their nice sleek guard hairs and the under fur gets kinky, and that might happen in February. So you'll shut it down because there's no sense catching them if they have no value, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think of that coffee?
It's good.
Mm.
It's got no bite.
No afterburn, does it?
Yeah.
Very, very smooth. This Old Smokes coffee, and it's got me wound up for this this podcast. Let me tell you. Okay, we have 17 Furbearers in Alberta. We're pretty blessed.
Yeah, we are.
There's a huge number, and we have 14 of them on our trapline. We're too far north for badger, bobcat, and raccoon.
Right.
So,
and we do have skunks up here, but by the time the fur is prime here, they're generally denned up.
And it's one of those things. Like, I mean, there's skunks out here on this trapline, but in the big bush, you never see a skunk. You never smell a skunk. You never know they're around.
No.
Usually where skunks are caught now is in the farmlands because they're making trouble.
Yeah.
Right? And people know about them. But we just, there is no season on either raccoon or skunk.
Right.
They're
and
open all
the
year
raccoons
round.
we don't have.
Yeah, we have no raccoon up
yeah.
here. And with, like I say, with skunk, we just never run into them. And you hear about a little bit of them in the farmland and that around home. People having difficulties with them. But as a trapper, unless somebody wants us to do damage control, we just don't have anything to do with it.
We have done a skunk show though before with Ryan Demchinsky and his girls down in southern Saskatchewan. That was an eye opener.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I got to go back and do that. I liked it when you were extracting the essence. That was a lot of, especially. What was his warning?
Oh, he said, so as you're starting to do this, keep your thumb over the vent
because you're shoving a needle into the actual gland. Yeah.
Yeah. So keep your thumb over the vent because they've been known to backfire or something like that. And it was like, wow. And it was a week before our youngest son was getting married. So it was extra special. Careful.
So black bear are considered big game. They're not considered fur, but on every trapline, like our trapline here, we're allowed to hunt and shoot bait 6 bear. We're not allowed to trap them. Some places, Saskatchewan now has a trapping season for black bear.
Yeah.
And they're doing, I believe with lake snares is how they do it. Another animal that shows up often in snares is cougar. And here in Alberta, we've got an exploding cougar population. I think last year was it? Wasn't this year. It'd be last year at the AGM, Alberta Trap Association annual general meeting. A fellow was there from fishing or from the government, and I said, "How many were caught? How many cougar were caught?" Because you're always trying to get a feel because cougar are one of those iconic things like grizzly bears and penguins or whatever that panda bears that people
Penguins?
well, that people just got a hug kind of thing, and so there's a lot of uproar whenever cougars are caught. Because for one thing, they're a big game animal. They're not a fur animal. So none of the trappers get to keep them.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No, and they're confiscated and incinerated.
Yeah.
No one benefits from them in any manner whatsoever, which is just so completely
My son
contrary.
has
It
caught now
seems.
3 of them, and all 3 have been.
Yeah.
He's trapline there at Rocky Mountain House on the eastern slopes of the Rockies here in Alberta, and he's volunteered to skin them, have them tanned,
And donate
have the
them.
skull done, and all that, and donate it to a local school or donate to anything. And they take it away and they destroy it.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to talking with the Fish and Wildlife fella, and I says, so how many were caught in the last year by trappers? And he says 47. And I go, I kind of take a breath in and I think, 47, huh? I say, so is that a significant number? And he says, no. I says, what? He says, no. He says, the population is huge and growing. It's not significant. And I says, well, the next time I hear you interviewed by the media, I want to hear those words out of your lips.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody thinks that catching 47 cats is a big damn deal, and it's not.
Well, and the other thing about it is where they're being caught is way out of where their normal habitat and travel corridors would be.
Yeah, we actually have cougar tracks I've seen in
Yeah.
the snow here in the springtime. There's a big old tom comes through here. Should not be any cougar here. Cougar are supposedly the eastern slopes of mountainous areas is where they live. We are a long ways from. As a matter of fact, we brag about our trapline that we have one hill on our trapline.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a sign there, and Lover's Leap or
It's not much of a hill.
Yeah,
maybe it's a muskeg overlook,
Yeah.
but it's
because it's so
not
flat and muskeggy here. This is not a place where cougars should be, but they are.
Yeah.
And that's just because the population is so huge. They're getting pushed out and pushed everywhere, and it's causing a lot of problems now. Pets are being drug off and that sort of thing. The 2 cougar, though, that are mountain lions that are being caught by trappers are old females who can no longer sustain, so they're turning to scavenging off of wolf bait piles,
Yeah.
or young. The young that are being kicked out, and so they have to go find their own area. And they don't do real well at it, and that's where they end up. I know my son, the 3, I talk about the 3 that he's caught and turned in. 2 are very young, and 1 was very old.
Yeah.
One she only had 2 canine teeth left, and she was 87 pounds, and she
Yeah.
should have been a 140-pound
She
cat.
is starving to death.
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing when that kind of stuff is going on. But anyway, we so this coming up Friday is September 1st, and then we are only a month away from our first season opener.
Well, yeah, and that's October 1. And on that October 1, muskrat opens, beaver opens, coyote, wolf, and fox. However, we won't target any of them.
No, we generally don't start until around the end of October, and that can be good for us for muskrat, and sometimes we're breaking ice.
Yeah, it's the worst thing. There's no good amount of ice until you can actually walk on it. It's kind of like you can't be a little bit pregnant. When you get that quarter, half-inch, or 1-inch ice, it's still not enough to be able to walk on, and yet it's too much to be able to canoe in or wade through. So we wait till the end of October, just because 2 things. One, I want the animals I catch to be prime as possible, and I want them to the most value. And the later in the season, the bigger they are. They grow very fast.
Yep.
Okay.
The only exceptions there would be damage control.
Well, yeah, but when we're talking about the muskrat, I want them to be as prime as possible and as big as possible. So the difference between October 1st and October 21st can be quite a bit in a muskrat's life. I hate being the king of the XX small at the auction. So that's one point that's important when it comes to the muskrat. And the second is that you get a ton of winter kill with muskrat. They are not really bright. I mean, they're a rodent, so they're not really bright. And a lot of the bodies of water that they choose, they can't make the winter through.
Right.
So a lot of people will say to me, and I hear this conversation all the time, man, I've got this pond. It is so full of rats. You should see the push-ups on it. And I just can't wait till spring when they're all going to be big and prime and all that. And then spring, they're not there. well, they can either starve to death, they can get disease and die, or they can get froze out. They can get froze out from their food. They can get froze into their dens and that kind of stuff. So with muskrat, it's that old bird in the hands worth two in the bush thing. So I do them as late as we can in
Yeah.
October.
And if we find push-ups, we'll trap them in the wintertime too through the ice because they're
Yep.
just then that's generally when we do get some extra large, and they are very, very prime.
Well, and out here in the big bush especially is not a good place for muskrats.
No.
A lot of otter, a lot of mink out here, and they're very, very hard on muskrat. When most of the muskrats all come out of the prairie farmland, all
Yeah.
those little potholes and that kind of stuff is where they come from, and so that's where we'll target them. Out here in the big bush, lots of times when I'm setting for otter in the middle of the winter, and that I will run into a bunch of push-ups. Well, I will set them right away because it's only a matter of time before an otter or a mink digs their way into that
Yep.
push-up and freezes them out anyway.
Yeah.
And it happens every winter.
Yep.
Because it's funny because you'll see, I'll have this little pond here and it'll have a dozen push-ups on it, and then they all get dug out, and in the next winter there's no push-ups on it.
Yeah.
None. The otter and the mink will actually clean out a body of water and then move on to the next, and then they come check it every year. It's really cool because in the snow you can see otter traveling. They come check it, but if there's none of those push-ups not around, they're gone.
Yeah.
So everybody talks about how nature's in balance and all that. No, it's not. Nature eats till it's full and then goes
Yeah,
away, and whether that's
exactly.
the last one or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Our beaver, we don't target in the fall unless we have to. That's
Yeah.
the damage control part of it. We have. It looks like we're going to be this fall though, because I see the. We've been traveling around and I see them crazy beaver are building water everywhere and along the roads and that.
Yeah.
So the oil
Well, I
companies
expect
will
we're going to be getting a call from the oil company here
Yeah.
very shortly because they're starting. They have been there to clean out some culverts, but it takes. Are you going to?
This is just too cool, man.
I know it is.
It's a little bullet.
Yeah.
I'm really going with the bullet here anyway. So there we go. I'll figure it out too.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Look at it. Kept it nice and hot too. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
that is just as cute as can
Yep.
be.
Anyway, so some beavers might get it this year, close to where we are, close to the roads. But for the most part, we wait then until January through the ice for them.
A lot of. The only reason I would do them in the fall is either damage control or if I need bait.
Mm-hmm.
We got lots of bait this year. I've been really stacked up ahead of time on that. And coyote and wolf and fox, none of them are prime in October.
No.
Not even this far north. Not even close to being prime. I will start setting up my wolf baits then. It just
Yeah.
depends on the amount of snow.
And cold too, because if it's not freezing, then it's way too easy for the birds to just clean up everything.
Oh my
and then
God.
you're just hauling bait. And for us, we pick up a lot of roadkill. We have to have a special permit for that, but we pick up roadkill and deposit it and whatnot. But it's a lot of work to do all of that. And if the birds are just going to eat it, I mean, in the wintertime when things are frozen and it takes a bird longer to eat it, it's a great calling card for the wolf and coyote. We're targeting the wolf out here, but more than anything. But
Once again, in the big bush, there aren't many coyotes because there are wolves.
yeah,
And the wolves eat
Yeah, and
the
here
coyotes.
we don't have as many wolves as others do in different areas, as we don't have the big game populations out here
Yeah,
either.
our ungulates are pretty low. Very, very few deer and no elk at all.
No,
We
and
have
the
moose.
occasional moose.
Yeah, we have moose. And so if you look at a big square, which is our trapline, it's a big square, we have one pack of wolves that kind of loops onto the top part of our line from out of the northwest, I believe, and we have another that comes out of the south or southeast that loops on the bottom. And where the lines where the intersperse is always hilarious because if they both happen to be going through there at the same time, the one side is all covered in pee from of a seismic line. It's all covered in pee from one of the herds or one of the packs, and the other side's covered in pee from the other pack. It's this big it's peeing match, really.
Yeah,
is what it is.
exactly.
But wolves are one of those animals that are really difficult. You need to have the perfect amount of snow.
Yeah.
If you have too little snow, then they're really, really hard to it's impossible just about to set a foothold for them because a lot of our footholds are done blind.
Yeah.
Like step downs off of beaver dams and all that kind of stuff. And we'll cover all that in future podcasts. But the if you have enough snow where they have to walk as a pack and they follow a trail, and you can hang a lot of them in a hurry with snares and that. If you have too much snow, then they take and go yard up wherever the big game animals are, and the big game animals will yard up right into the thick into the thick bush and that. Or lots of times, then the wolves will actually go to the farmlands too. Because they can travel around.
And they do. We know they do because we get calls.
And so there's another one of those situations where the only definitive thing is opening and closing day. In between, the wolves may not be around, or it may be too much snow to really focus on that year. The other thing
Again,
is
it's a science, right? It's not an absolute. There's a science to what we do in terms of determining when we're going to, just because it's November 1st or October 1st or whatever it is, doesn't mean that we're just going to hit the ground running. In some instances, yes. In others, no.
In actual fact, the amount of daylight is how an animal's hide primes.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, there's a difference between prime and full winter heavy. So prime is how thick the leather is.
Right.
Okay, so that's when beaver's a classic example. You take and skin it out, and it dries, and it's got black on it. It wasn't prime in those spots because that leather is thin enough that you're actually seeing the roots of the hair from the other side. So the amount of daylight that they get controls how thick that their hide is, or their primeness of their hide. Now the fullness and how heavy the fur and all that is has to do with cold.
Yeah.
So you could have a marten or a fisher or a wolf or whatever that is actually prime, but not get full winter heavy on it because it's the fur just isn't there. It hasn't been in enough cold weather, right?
Exactly.
So another thing we've had a problem with wolves in the last few years is everything's been mangy.
Yeah.
And that's a sign of overpopulation.
Yep. And it's just heartbreaking. It's a brutal, brutal thing for those animals to have it. If anyone has ever seen mange or experienced mange on the Furbearers that they catch, you can just see just how brutal, it's just a terrible way for an animal to die. And for a trapper, there is so much effort that goes into putting up baits and maintaining baits so that if and when that pack comes around, that there's something there to hold them long enough for your snares to be effective. And that we snare only for
on
killing
baits,
snare for those for wolves on those baits. But so there's a lot of effort that goes into it, and if all you're catching is mangy critters, first of all, you have to be really careful that you don't drag any of that back to your own household. So you have to be careful about how you handle them, and you should really burn them because it's just it's gross.
Wow, that's the problem with a pack animal. I mean, when you catch one animal out of a pack that has mange, just about the whole pack has mange.
Yeah.
It's
it's
just
how
the way
they
it is.
keep warm. It's how they manage. It's anything pack related. So
that's pretty tough. That is. So anyway, then that's the 1st of October. Now, when we hit 1st of November, that's probably when I'm going to be setting up my wolf baits. But more importantly, that's Fisher and Martin.
Yeah.
Fisher, Martin, Weasel, and Wolverine. Mm-hmm. And so everything goes day one because at this far north, they're all prime. They're all prime and all ready to go. And so we go hard. We set up. We have over 400 boxes spread out across. And because we're remote, we don't pick up our boxes in the spring of the year or when the season's over. We pick up our traps.
Just the traps.
Yeah. And so we have different areas that we set and target. We want to. It's we just skim the cream or we cherry pick and you'll be maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks in one spot and move to another but we probably are running 180 to 250 traps at a time for Fisher and Martin.
Yep.
Yeah.
We close some down, open some others. It really kind of depends on what we find we're catching as well. And we opened part of a new line and all we caught was Fisher.
Yeah.
And then now we're catching more martins there. We did last year catch more martins there. So martin and Fisher compete with each other and eat. Well, the fishers will
Fisher eats the martin.
eat the martin. So
It's all about
you know,
size.
yeah,
It's all about size.
yeah.
You know, you got the fox, you got the coyote, you got the wolf. Well, the coyote eats the fox, and the wolf eats the coyote and the fox. And it's the same thing with with the martin. He's here.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing he gets to eat are voles and mice and squirrels, but everything above him, the fisher,
Yeah,
they eat martin.
exactly. So we don't trap anything close to the cabin really when it comes to fisher and martin.
Mostly because we have short-tailed weasel here.
Yeah.
And
They keep the mouse and squirrel population
Yeah.
under control here. So we have to be
I
careful.
remember I was out here by myself one time, and it's easy for an animal to get underneath our cabin here because it's elevated a little bit and it's insulated. But I got in. I don't know, I'd been out checking the line, and I got in. It was like 3 a.m, and I lay down, and I must have fell asleep, just bang. Anyway, because when I looked at the clock, it was an hour and a half later, and there's this god awful screaming going on. I sit up in bed, and I don't know what's going on, and I realize that there's thumping, and what it is a weasel has got himself a squirrel underneath the cabin, because the squirrel will sleep at night,
And
the
there
weasel
is a bloody battle going on.
oh my God!
So anyway, I mean, we've got all of those, and included in that would be the wolverine.
yes,
Right?
yeah,
Wolverine are a quota animal, and no matter the size of your trap line in Alberta, at this particular given time anyway,
you're allowed one.
you're allowed one.
Yeah.
In some other areas of the province, they are much more prevalent.
Yep.
And some trappers do find that they can get some. Well, it's not permission, but it's what would you call it? I guess.
Well, they get to keep anything they catch over the quota. They get to keep, and
Yeah.
as long as they're not going out to target them. Because particularly in areas north of here, and we've had a couple of shows in season 4 that show that there's an interaction or a relationship of some sort between lynx and wolverine, and where you have lots of one, you have lots of the other.
Yeah.
And we're not sure what it is or why it is or whatever, but we did visit with a fellow, and they've
They
have
catch
lots and
certainly
lots
more
of
than one
wolverine
every year.
and
But
60, 70 lynx.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really big success story. But that's one of the things that the Alberta Trappers Association has been involved with is a study that's been done with I think it's with the Alberta Conservation Association, right?
Yep.
And the U of A
Yep. On the wolverines.
on the
yes.
wolverine. So we didn't know, we hadn't scratched the surface on wolverine until this study was commenced, and now we know how much we still don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It was actually kind of good because there was nobody knew a damn thing about wolverine, but yet they're going to make decisions in
Yeah.
typical government fashion.
Yeah.
So November, we're pushing hard. I've probably setting up a wolf bait or two, but I'm really focusing hard on on our fisher and martin. We're giving her hard on that. No, December 1 now, otter and lynx open up. So while I'm also checking all my fisher and martin, I'm opening all my lynx pens, and we run hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Because it's funny. We're allowed 22 of those a season, and you run hundreds to
Not 22 pens, 22 lynx.
22 lynx.
We have hundreds of pens.
Lynx are the most erratic animal you'll ever have anything to do with. And,
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about them is that you have to have the correct thing there in front of them when they show up. You have to take advantage of him just staggering his way up to your set. So it takes a pile of lynx pens, and I take in blind snare around a lot of sets and all that kind of stuff in order to catch that. But that's in the early part of December. I'm getting that going hard, and I will have my eyes open for otter. Now it'll depend on how much snow there is. I mean, it starts December 1, and at that point we're usually froze.
Yeah.
Okay, and I will start setting some otter sets if we have where they're crossing over a dam and there's open water. I'll get a set on that where they're going in and out of the water, or places where they go in alongside the cattails, that kind of stuff by a beaver house. I will take advantage of those because those animals are only there while that water's open, then they move on. Usually, depending on the amount of snow again, so this is where you got to be flexible. The amount of snow, I'm not going to start targeting those otter till a little bit later in the season when they're making all those trips, and we get to see their trails in the snow and take and do those blind sets. So
Yeah.
usually the first of December is focus on those lynx and carry on with the
And
marten.
sometimes we have quite a bit of snow in December, sometimes not. Sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't happen till around Christmas time or early into the new year, but that'll also determine the method of transportation that we use, whether
Yeah.
it's the Argo or whether it's the snowmobile. So
And usually by before Christmas, we have all the wolf baits are up and firing, and all the snares are out for them.
yeah.
And we come out for a week at Christmas time, and I'll take and spend some time putting out some footholds and that kind of stuff because we have to check them every 48 hours.
Yeah.
And that gets us through then into January.
Where
Yeah.
everything is open.
Yeah, everything is, and well, everything is actually open in December, but now in January, as I'm more than likely, we're winding down on our marten and fisher.
Yeah.
We've probably quoted out. It goes to the end of January, but we've probably quoted out at that point. So now I got time on my hands.
Ooh.
I got to do something.
Time. With that precious commodity that we were talking
And
about earlier.
So I'm focused heavy on the lynx and on the otter, and now I start
Beaver.
beaver.
Yeah.
And I'll set up on one or two beaver lodges every day as I go by them. I'll take and go out and do a set on them. That can be a lot. Like last winter was terrible amount of snow, and it was just like it never ended just shoveling. You know, I don't even shovel snow at home. I have machinery for that, but out here I'm running a shovel.
Yeah. Well, that's the reality being out here. I mean, there's certain amount of mechanical assistance that we have, and then there's some that we just can't access out here. It's too far.
We have in January and February. Usually we have a Chinook or two, and that's animals really move heavy during those Chinooks, so you can get a big flush of fur then.
Yeah, and it's nice because then, if we have some nice days where the high is -10, it's just beautiful,
Yeah.
right?
Most often we pull our lines long before the seasons are done.
Yeah,
Like the mustelids, so that's weasel and
Fisher, Martin, Wolverine.
all go to the end of January. Actually, I think weasel goes to the 15th of February, but we pull they're an incidental to the other four or the other three. So those are all pulled for sure by the end of January. Cat lynx goes till the middle of February,
Yeah.
and we pull that. And then
Yeah, we're usually done before then too.
at
for
that
lynx.
point, I might be focused really heavily on otter. We're allowed 12 otter, so sometimes in a day you get 4 or 5 otter when you hit them fishing in creeks and that kind of
Well,
stuff.
and traveling when they travel kind of in a family unit for the most part, or there's several of them, and we can often take most, if not all.
And then in there, after all the times of being bored, checking your wolf baits and that, you'll go staggering through in the middle of the night, and a flashlight will light up a set of green eyes looking at you, and life gets exciting.
Yeah, life can get really exciting.
Yeah. So I mean that goes on, and then usually end of February the wolves are done. Coyotes are usually done around home at the same time, and
We don't have very many fox up in our area.
No.
At home either.
And then we start looking at moving into the spring muskrat season, which is a great time. That is kind of how we plan things out. This year we're going to go back into an area that we've been closed out of.
Yeah, there was a pipeline spill up here about 3 years ago, and
The northwest corner of our line we haven't been into in that amount of time.
yeah, that got a little hairy actually, because Richard was doing a sportsman show in the middle of March, and he got this panic call from the oil company about where all of his traps were set because they'd had an oil spill up there, and they wanted to send people in to determine where the spill was and how bad it was, but they were afraid that some of their workers were going to step in a 330. And I don't blame them for being concerned about that.
No.
But there was then we haven't really heard anything much from them over the last while.
No, it's they've I don't know, refused communication or don't think we need to know or whatever. Anyway, we're going back.
Yep.
We're going through there, and the whole thing was that in the bush and that. Trails are what you follow. Well, this pipeline was my access up there, and I'm going right through it this year. Heck with them. It's time to get back up there trapping. I need to I'm going to shut down the eastern side of the northeast side here and do the northwest for
Yeah.
Fisher and Martin. It's very much time, but
So that's how we plan, how
That-
we start, and where we're getting to here in the next few
and
weeks.
how quickly it can change because
Yeah.
like I say, things can change so fast.
Yeah.
3 years ago we had nothing for muskrat in the fall because on the the 3rd of October it froze hard enough that you couldn't use a canoe and yet you couldn't walk on.
Yeah.
So we were done. No
No
muskrat that
opportunity.
fall
Yeah.
at all, right? So you got to play it by ear. But knowing your land and knowing your animals is the most important thing that you're ever going to do out trapping.
Yep. And learn.
Well, we would like very much for everybody to join us at www.trappinginc.com, and from there you can find the links to everything, to this podcast, to our YouTube, to Amazon
Facebook.
Prime.
Yep.
Yeah, we are a video direct supplier for Amazon Prime. We're doing really well there.
Yeah.
Very popular.
Yeah.
Our Facebook stuff, Instagram, Twitter, all that. We really like hearing from you all. We like spreading the message about trapping and why trapping is necessary and why trappers are good people. We're conservationists.
Yeah, we are a conservationist. So thanks very much for joining us, and we hope to hear from you and see you, and we hope that you have a great season.
And maybe we'll see you down the line.